I know I've never liked your kind, but now, I'm just a father. Please, Dr. Riley, I need your hands.
General Corvin stood motionless at the edge of the war table, the holomap casting cold light across his scarred face. Simulated stars flickered like dying embers, each one a battlefield, each pulse a memory. Planets lost, soldiers buried, two brothers, vaporized by human weapons. The simulation ended with a soft chime. "Dismissed," he said without turning. Officers filed out in silence, eyes low. No one spoke of the final frame still ghosting on the display. A human doctor, sleeves stained red, kneeling beside a wounded Jurari captain, saving him. A war barely won, a truth no one wanted to admit. Horvin had removed the footage from all fleet archives, but it still haunted him. 7 wars, 2 brothers gone, one to a kinetic blast, the other to an infection delivered by a human bioweapon wrapped in kindness. He had buried both with his own hands. And ever since, his decree had stood unchallenged. No Terran medics aboard any Jurari vessel. He called them butchers in white, cold operators with warm smiles, dangerous in ways even the battlefield couldn't anticipate. No one argued, no one dared, until his son collapsed. It began during a transit jump between systems. Torvin, 12 cycles old, bright-eyed, endlessly curious, was reading a manual on interspecies languages in the private quarters when his breath hitched. He let out a sharp cough, then another. By the third, he was struggling to inhale. His body trembled. Skin color shifted to a muted hue, glands misfiring. No fever, no visible wounds, just sudden systemic failure. By the time the medical staff arrived, he had lost the ability to speak. Corvin was there moments later, boots echoing on polished deck plating. He shoved past 2 stunned aides and saw his son sprawled across the floor, eyes wide, jaw clenching rhythmically in silence. A spasm racked his small frame. "Get him to the infirmary," Horvin barked. Jurari medics rushed forward. Advanced scanners activated, drones hovered. Intravenous nutrients were administered. Blood readings, neuromapping, cellular breakdown analysis. Every test they had, they ran. The diagnosis was inconclusive. Worse, the deterioration continued. Neuromuscular function degraded by the hour. His respiratory rhythm became erratic. The throat swelled, without injury, without cause. His vocal cords darkened from lack of oxygen. Anti-inflammatory protocols failed. Antivirals returned zero effect. Microbiota imbalances showed no trace of infection. "We do not know what this is," the chief physician said, voice tight with shame. "You are telling me," Horvin said slowly, "that my son is dying, and you do not know how to stop it?" The room was silent. He stood there, breathing hard, feeling powerless in a way that made him dizzy. His command was absolute, his fleet unmatched. He had crushed rebellions, blockaded systems, turned planets into cautionary tales. But he could not make his son breathe. An aide stepped forward, hesitant. "General, there is one other option." Corvin's gaze turned to ice. "Do not say it. Commander Alice keeps a human medic aboard the auxiliary freighter, not officially enlisted, but—" I said no. "General, if I may." "No." The aide retreated. By the next day, Torvin could no longer open his eyes. Muscles along his neck began to seize. His heart rate fluctuated. Jurari physiology could endure trauma, but only with direction. No treatment protocol matched this progression. Dr. Naylor, the most experienced surgeon on the ship, leaned in close to Corvin. "This is not something we were trained for. This may not be of Jurari origin at all." Horvin turned away. Later, when the room had cleared, he sat beside the bed. Torvin's breathing was shallow now, barely perceptible. One of the monitors dimmed briefly. The boy's fingers twitched. Horvin whispered to the dark, "I do not care what they did. He does not deserve to die for it." He opened the comm. "Bring the human." No fanfare marked his arrival. The door slid open, and in stepped a man, average height, graying at the temples, carrying a duffel that looked too small for anything important. No armor, no insignia, just a gray t-shirt under a padded vest, clean hands, calm face. Name: David Riley. Profession: emergency trauma physician. Earthborn, discharged with honors after a relief tour on the quarry front. For the last few years, he'd been unofficially working on fringe worlds, quietly fixing what no one else could. He said nothing as he approached the bed. Corvin bristled. "You will speak only when I allow it." Riley gave a short nod, then turned back to the child. He watched Torvin's breathing pattern for 20 seconds, checked the radial pulse manually, used a slimline stethoscope, not a scanner, not a drone, but a piece of old Terran equipment. He adjusted the head of the bed slightly, allowing gravity to aid the boy's struggling diaphragm. Then he turned. "I need suction, humidified oxygen, nebulizers set up with isotonic saline, and a wide-spectrum allergen panel run now." Dr. Nallor blinked. "You believe this is an allergic reaction?" "I believe this is airway obstruction from progressive laryngeal edema, possibly from an undetected cross-species protein intolerance or a hyperactive immune trigger. And unless you want a trach line carved open in 5 minutes, get me those supplies." No one moved. Horvin stared at him. "You will not cut my son." Riley met his gaze. "Then give me 5 minutes. But that's all I've got." He reached into his bag and removed a vial. Human-made antihistamines. Not perfectly adapted for Jirari use, but his hands didn't hesitate. He adjusted the dosage, calculated by weight, and administered it subcutaneously in a soft region near the spine. The boy twitched, then stilled. Riley began a manual suction sweep of the upper airway, using a flexible tube while the nebulizer was prepped. He monitored each breath, checked the heart rhythm. Every movement was smooth, fast, practiced. Within 7 minutes, Torvin's breathing began to deepen. His chest rose more easily. The tremors faded from his hands. At 10 minutes, the boy let out a hoarse, shallow sound. Horvin froze. "Did he?" Riley looked up. "He's trying to speak. Don't push him. Let his airway recover." The general stepped forward slowly. His eyes flicked to the monitor, respiration normalizing, blood oxygen climbing. His son was alive. Riley stood. His hands were shaking now, just slightly. Adrenaline drop. "I'll stay close, but you'll need to keep monitoring for at least the next 2 days. No forced speech, no hard foods. Keep the humidity high." Horvin stared at him. "You saved him." Riley just nodded. "That's what we do." The general didn't respond, couldn't. His son was breathing. His son was alive. And it was human hands that had brought him back. David Riley didn't sleep. He stayed beside the biobed, resting against the wall while diagnostic readouts flickered overhead. Torvin's breathing was slow but consistent now, monitored by both human and Jirari machines. Occasionally, the boy would stir. Once, he murmured a broken word. "Progress." Horvin remained in the observation suite above, arms crossed tightly as he watched through the transparent wall. Officers came and went. Reports were delivered. None of it reached him. He didn't speak. He only watched. "Doctor," Naylor entered quietly. "His condition has stabilized. The allergen panel confirms exposure to a glycoprotein in one of the imported food supplements, cross-contaminated from the Fari trade shipment." Horvin didn't look at him. "And you did not detect this?" "No, General. You called it an immune failure. We assumed a systemic infection. The markers were similar. You assumed wrong." Naylor bowed his head. "Yes." Horvin turned slowly. And yet the human recognized it. In minutes. Naylor's throat worked as he tried to find the words. "General, their species evolved alongside a vast array of allergens. Their medical systems are designed to identify threats that mimic harmless substances. Ours evolved differently. What we call immune collapse, they see as a warning sign." The reaction was obvious, to him. Horvin walked to the edge of the suite, staring down at the boy and the quiet Terran, who had not left his side. When he asked for suction, he said quietly, "I didn't understand what he meant." Naylor nodded. "He defaulted to manual techniques, not because we lacked machines, but because he didn't trust them to act fast enough." Corvin's voice hardened. "You'll make the adjustments. Teach the procedure. I want every medic in this fleet trained on those symptoms within the cycle." "Yes, General." As Naylor left, Horvin stared a moment longer. Then he keyed the intercom. "Bring the human to me." Riley stood before him minutes later, hands clean, eyes tired. He didn't salute, just stood there. "You had no reason to help us," Corvin said. "Didn't need one," Riley replied. "I gave the order that no human would ever serve aboard my ships." "I know. And yet you came." Riley shrugged. "A child's life is a child's life." Corvin's jaw tightened. "You believe all of us should be forgiven because of that?" "No, just saying the kid didn't do anything wrong." There was a pause. Corvin gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." Riley hesitated, then obeyed. "You know what your people did in the Coulter Nebula?" Corvin asked. "I read the reports. My brother died there, burned alive when his cockpit decompressed after a Terran drone sliced through his ship's hull. The crew recovered his body in pieces." Riley nodded slowly. "I'm sorry." "And my other brother," Corvin continued, "was killed by a weapon disguised as a medical aid pod, human engineered. You call it a misfire, we call it a lie." "I know." Corvin's hands curled into fists. "So why should I let you walk this ship?" Riley met his gaze calmly. "Because your son's still alive." Silence filled the room. Then Corvin leaned back. "You'll remain under supervision. You'll assist in the infirmary. No unsanctioned movement. No comm access. You'll treat who I tell you to treat." Riley nodded once. "Understood. And if I find even a trace of treachery?" "You won't," Riley said. Corvin studied him for a long moment. "Dismissed." The first days were tense. Riley was assigned a corner workstation in the infirmary, kept under the quiet watch of 2 Gerari guards. He didn't argue. He reviewed the ship's medical software, noted gaps in their emergency protocols, and reprogrammed the triage algorithms with input from a massive human database stored on a personal drive he never let out of sight. He treated no one at first. Then a maintenance tech came in with a severed digit from a hull breach accident. Gerari medics prepped for reattachment, Riley observed quietly. "Your thermal field's too wide," he said finally. "You'll kill surrounding tissue. Use localized cryo-isolation instead." Dr. Naylor turned slowly. "And you have experience with digit repair?" 50, 2 successful reattachments. 29 from trauma cases worse than this. Naylor hesitated, then nodded. Riley stepped forward, applied the cryo-clamp with surprising delicacy, and used microsutures more refined than the automated arm could provide. The digit fused cleanly. Blood flow normalized in under 90 seconds. The tech didn't thank him, just looked away. That night, someone scratched a warning into the wall near Riley's quarters. "Butcher in white." He didn't react. He just kept working. Torvin began speaking again after 4 days. His first word was light. Then, water. Then he called for his father. Corvin was beside him in moments. "You live," he said, unable to keep the tremor from his voice. Torvin blinked. "Did you save me?" "No, I brought someone who could." The boy looked toward the door. "Was it the man with the gray eyes?" "Yes." "Can I see him?" Corvin hesitated, then nodded. Riley entered quietly. The boy smiled faintly from his pillow. "You're real," he said. "Very real," Riley said, pulling up a stool. "Thank you," Torvin said. I thought I was falling." "You were," Riley said. "But you stopped. That was all you." Corvin stood by the wall, silent. After a long pause, Torvin asked, "Do humans get sick too?" Riley smiled. "All the time." "Then who helps you?" Riley glanced toward the window. "Sometimes each other, sometimes no one." Corvin stepped forward. "That's enough." Riley stood. "He's strong. He'll recover fully." "I know." Corvin looked at his son, then at the human. Then, finally, he offered his hand. Not as a general. As a father. Riley took it. The message arrived 12 days later. Short, encrypted, urgent. A supply transport en route to Corvin's flagship had gone silent after reporting a sudden spike in ambient radiation near the fringes of the Varos belt. The last transmission included 3 words before the signal cut out. Medical emergency. Unknown. Corvin assembled his senior staff immediately. Tactical teams proposed threat assessments. Engineering suspected reactor breach. The science officer suspected gravitational distortion, only Dr. Corbin. Naller asked the question that shifted the room's momentum. Was a human aboard? Corvin froze. Then his eyes turned to Riley, standing calmly near the rear of the chamber. Do you have anything to say? Riley checked the manifest on a data slate. Crew listed 8 Girari, no humans. But the radiation spike, it's not consistent with a standard reactor leak. Too erratic. Corvin stared at him. You recognize it? Could be a low-level plasma band anomaly, Riley said. Or worse, contaminant exposure triggering a biochemical chain reaction. If that's the case, standard Girari detox protocols won't work. And you're certain of this? No, but I've seen similar effects before. During a biohazard event on Ceres. If I'm right, their central nervous systems could already be failing. Organ shutdown within hours. The room went silent. Corvin clenched his fists. We're 3 hours from their last known location. Prep the shuttle. You're going with us. Dr. Naller blinked. General, with respect, protocol forbids the exposure of high-risk agents to potential. Protocols are for peacetime, Corvin snapped. My men are dying. The shuttle cut across the black. Its hull shimmered in the Veros belt's faint radiation glow, particles scraping its shielding like icy dust. Inside, Riley reviewed every case file he'd ever logged on radiation-linked toxicosis. He didn't speak. The crew watched him, no longer with suspicion. Now, with expectation. They docked to the transport manually, bypassing the ship's auto-lock systems. The interior was dark. Life support was still functional, but flickering. The air smelled faintly of ozone and copper. They found the crew in the central galley. 4 were unconscious. 2 were convulsing. 1 was barely coherent, sitting against a bulkhead muttering nonsense. Riley dropped to his knees next to the closest one, scanned the vitals manually, then checked the eyes. Pupil constriction, hypothermic extremities, clear signs of nerve conduction failure. He turned to Corvin. This isn't radiation sickness. It's a plasma agent reaction. Synthetic particulate, likely bonded to the cargo casing. It's interfering with their myelin sheaths. Their neurons are shorting out. Can you stop it? Corvin asked. Maybe, but not with what we brought. I need a chelating compound with nanoscale delivery. Something that can cross their blood-brain barrier without damaging tissue. Dr. Naylor stepped forward. Nothing we have meets those specifications. I do, Riley said. Corvin's voice was sharp. What? Riley opened his case. Inside, sealed in a cold lock cartridge, was a vial of pale blue fluid. Experimental, he said. Developed after the Ceres incident. Binds to synthetic plasma agents and purges them through renal filtration. Not approved for general use. Side effects unknown in Girari biology. And you've used it on humans? Twice. Both lived. Dr. Naller hesitated. This violates every known protocol of treatment. Riley nodded. It's still their only shot. Corvin turned to him. Do it. It took 20 minutes to prepare the compound for infusion. Riley adjusted dosages for weight and glandular differences. He administered it manually, 1 crew member at a time, using only a narrow gauge line to control flow. The convulsing slowed, respirations deepened. A comatose pilot blinked twice, then groaned softly. Dr. Naylor stared at the monitors. Their cellular conduction is restoring. Neural activity is climbing. This shouldn't be possible. Riley kept his hands steady. It's not a miracle. It's good chemistry. One of the patients tried to sit up. Another, groggy but breathing, whispered, I feel cold. Riley placed a thermal pad over her chest. That's the compound pushing the toxins out. You're okay. By the time the last patient stabilized, Riley's shirt was soaked in sweat. He stood slowly, stretching his neck, exhaustion sinking into his bones. He looked over and saw Corvin staring at him. Not coldly. Not as a threat. Just quietly. Measured. Riley wiped his hands and stepped away. They'll need follow-up. Monitoring for renal stress. You'll have to make sure they hydrate constantly for at least 36 hours. We will, Corvin said. Riley nodded, then sat down against the wall. The silence held for several minutes. Then Corvin said, Why did you keep the compound secret? Because it's experimental, Riley replied. Because I didn't think I'd need it, and because half the galaxy still thinks we're too reckless to be trusted." Corvin said nothing. But when the ship's signal relay reactivated, and the crew sent the first successful transmission, the words were simple. All lives stable. Humans save them. When they returned to the main fleet, no one met them with suspicion. The docking bay was full of silent officers, watching the shuttle open, watching Riley step out first. He didn't raise his hand, didn't bow, just walked forward quietly. Horvin followed, then stepped in front of him. The general turned to the assembled staff. "This man," he said, voice carrying across the bay, "saved my son, saved our crew, saved this fleet from repeating the same mistakes I made." He looked to Riley. "I once banned human doctors because I thought their medicine was flawed, dangerous, cold, but I was wrong." He faced the crowd again. "The decree is lifted, effective immediately. Earthborn medics will no longer be refused service aboard any Jirari vessel." Not a cheer, not applause, just a silent nod, spreading from officer to officer, a kind of reverence. Riley glanced toward Corvin. "You didn't have to say that." Horvin met his eyes. "I did." Riley gave a faint smile. "Then I'll stay, if you'll have me." Corvin extended his hand. This time, not as a father. As a general, Riley took it. David Riley walked through the medbay unguarded now. No more surveillance drones hovered nearby. No retinal scans locked his tools. The guards who once flanked every hallway entrance now nodded to him, some awkwardly, some with real warmth. Progress came slowly, but it came. Torvin visited him daily. He was still recovering, voice rough from scarring but stronger by the week. Riley taught him how to play an old Terran card game, using transparent wafers printed with alien glyphs. They laughed over mispronunciations. Once, Torvin asked what Earth smelled like. "Depends on the season," Riley said. "Sometimes fresh rain on hot pavement, sometimes cinnamon bread from a street cart, sometimes diesel fumes, if you're in the wrong part of town." Torvin tilted his head. "What's cinnamon? I'll show you someday." Horvin entered mid-conversation, watching silently from the doorway. Torvin noticed him and grinned. "He cheats." "I do not," Riley replied, mock offended. "I'm just better at probability. You're terrible at bluffing. I used to be decent. Then I became a doctor. Poker face doesn't help when someone's coding." Horvin stepped inside fully. "Your shift ended an hour ago." Riley shrugged. "I like it here." "Why?" Horvin asked. Riley's voice was soft. "Because here, I get to help. No politics, no borders. Just need and skill." Torvin looked between them. "Are you going to stay with us?" Horvin's expression flickered. He answered before Riley could. "That depends." "On what?" the boy asked. "On whether he can survive an official appointment in Jirari service without going mad from all the protocol." Riley chuckled. "Give me a decent chair, and I'll adapt." 2 weeks later, the flagship responded to a distress call from a frontier colony. A heat surge had destabilized the atmospheric regulators. The colonists, Jirari and non-Jirari alike, were dealing with early symptoms of hyperthermia, heat exhaustion, and oxygen imbalance. Riley joined the triage team without hesitation. He didn't wait for orders. He moved through the overpressurized corridors of the colony's underground network, checking vitals, prioritizing cases, improvising with what little equipment they had. He used soaked cloth to cool an infant's overheated glands, inserted an IV line into a collapsed agricultural technician in the dark, by touch alone. When the cooling generators failed, he redirected the colony's irrigation system through intake filters, creating makeshift heat sinks in the recovery rooms. Dr. Naylor found him hours later, soaked in condensation, stabilizing an elderly colonist with hands that barely stopped shaking from exhaustion. "You're supposed to be resting," Naylor said. "So are half the medics out here. Do we get a prize when we collapse?" Naylor shook his head. "We used to believe human medicine was reckless, that your kind preferred improvisation to precision. But now I think you just understand that suffering doesn't follow instructions." Riley wiped his face with a rag. Neither does survival. That night, as the colony cooled and emergency passed, Corvin summoned Riley to the command balcony. The stars beyond the viewport shone bright. The colony was barely a dot below, quiet now. You've redefined what I thought a medic could be, Horvin said. Not just skilled, necessary, relentless. Riley stood beside him. I've had good teachers. No, you are the teacher now. Corvin turned to face him. You saved my son, then my crew, then an entire colony, not with superior technology, not with arrogance, with presence, with a hand steady enough. Riley didn't speak. Corvin extended a data slate. This is an offer of commission. Girari Medical Corps, full privileges, cross, species clearance. You'll outrank most of my command staff. You can choose your own team. Or fly solo. But it means staying. Officially. Riley took the slate, scanned it. His hand hovered. Then he pressed his thumbprint. Corvin gave a single, satisfied nod. You're one of us now. Torvin recovered fully within 2 more cycles. His voice remained raspy, but clear. He started training in basic emergency protocols, by his own request. Horvin once found him in the simulation room, practicing chest compressions on a medical dummy. Riley sat nearby, arms crossed. He insisted on learning it, Riley said. He's 12. He's your son, Riley replied. 12 won't stop him. Corvin watched his son perform another compression cycle, hands slightly off-center. He corrected it gently. The boy smiled up at both of them. Months passed. New conflicts emerged at the edges of Girari territory, diplomatic, minor. Riley was dispatched to aid in one of the peacekeeping efforts, treating malnourished settlers caught between supply embargoes. Corvin accompanied him. In a quiet tent, with injured of all species lying nearby, a young diplomat looked at Riley and asked, "What does it feel like to be trusted after so much suspicion?" Riley answered without looking up. It feels like a second chance. Horvin added quietly, It feels like we finally stopped bleeding long enough to see the person holding the gauze. The diplomat nodded and said nothing more. Later, on a quiet evening aboard the flagship, Riley sat alone in the observation dome. He watched a nearby sun dip behind a gas giant's rings, painting the stars in shifting colors. Corvin entered, silent at first. Then, "You miss Earth?" Riley smiled faintly. "Every now and then, especially the quiet parts, forests, wet leaves, long drives with no destination. You have quiet here." Riley nodded. "I do now." Horvin sat beside him. "When I first saw you," he said, "I thought you were a ghost, a reminder of everything I hated. And now? Now I see the man who healed my son, who made me rethink the enemy, who proved that a steady hand can be sharper than any weapon." Riley turned to him. "You think your people believe that too?" Corvin didn't hesitate. "They believe what they see, and they've seen you." He rose, one hand briefly on Riley's shoulder. "You saved more than my family. You saved something I thought was gone. Trust." He left without another word. Riley remained, watching the stars. His hands, so often smeared with blood, sweat, antiseptic, rested quietly in his lap. For the first time in years, they weren't trembling.